Grab your coat and get your hat. Leave your worries on the doorstep. Just direct your feet on the sunny side of the street. Can't you hear a pitter-pat? And the happy tune is your step. Life can be so sweet on the sunny side of the street. I used to walk in the shade with my blues on parade, but I'm not afraid. There's a rover crossed over, and if I never have a cent, I'll be rich as Rockefeller. Gold dust at my feet on the sunny side of the street. To walk in the shade with my blues on parade, but I'm not afraid. There's a rover crossed over, and if I never have a cent, I'll be rich as Rockefeller. Gold dust at my feet on the sunny side of the street.
This is the bar, the piano-shaped bar off the pool area, and on either side of the bar are cabanas and dressing rooms. And the pool, we're actually looking at the back end of the house. It's very difficult to photograph the front of the house because it's on a very steep hill, and it's only been photographed once from the front, from a helicopter. And I didn't have one handy for you today, so we're seeing it from the back, from the pool area. This home, which is in Hollywood, by the way, is only a couple of minutes from Sunset Boulevard, which is one of the main thoroughfares. And yet it has amazing privacy. Everyone who visits me are constantly amazed that we have outdoor carpeting everywhere. We have the thick kind of carpeting and the green kind of turf carpeting. And this is the newest addition to the house. This room here was once an open veranda, and I used to bring my guests out here to look at the wonderful view of Hollywood. And then I decided to enclose it as a porch, and I got a little carried away because then I went from screens to windows, and then I had the Italian tile floor put in, and it turned out to be a room rather than a porch. And I decided this would be a good place to have a nice bar. And we don't just use it as a bar, but we also use it for late night entertainment, for late after theater suppers and that sort of thing. This is an iron fireplace, and this used to be a plain wall here. And I opened up the fireplace that leads into the living room, so we have a two-way fireplace here. And these are Strauss crystals from Bavaria. And my most prized possession are a pair of candelabras that came from Ludwig of Bavaria's castle. They are blue opaline glass and ormolu bronze, and they're museum pieces. I've given some wonderful parties out here, and after the sun goes down, it's inclined to get a bit chilly, so we have outdoor heaters to heat the atmosphere. They're hidden in the trees, so they're not noticeable. But I can actually warm this entire outdoor area to about 70 degrees, which is very comfortable. Over here we have a barbecue, complete with candelabra and piano keys. And this is the barbecue area. This is my bedroom. How do you like it? It's French Victorian, and most of the furnishings are antique. The cabinets are French Boule, designed by André Boule early in the 18th century. The bed is a combination of antique and carvings done by a Spanish artisan that I discovered right here in Los Angeles, and I combined his carvings with the antique pieces that I found in an antique shop in my rummaging around. And the bedspread is white llama fur and ermine. This is the master bath with twin sinks. They call them his and hers, but since I'm a bachelor, I use them both myself. On the walls of this stairway are some of the cartoons and awards and presentations that commemorate my 30 years in show business. This was given to me by the County of Los Angeles to commemorate my silver anniversary in show business 5 years ago. And amongst other things, they said I put the word glamour back into show business. I've been cartooned all over the world by some marvelous cartoonists with great imagination. This one appeared in London. They likened me to Sir Ernest Macmillan there. And to our left, some awards to commemorate Columbia Records, the sale of over 100,000 albums. Each one of these represent 100,000 albums. And kind of a marvelous award from the piano technicians, who are sort of the unsung heroes of the piano world. The men who tune the pianos and keep them in top shape deemed me the man who had done the most to promote interest in piano music during the year 1953. It's cartoons like this suggesting that I run for the United States Senate that give people the idea that I may have political aspirations. I don't. I send Christmas greetings to the President of the United States every year, and each year they send me an acknowledgement of the Christmas present. This one acknowledges my cookbook that I sent the President. He said, this is when Lyndon Johnson was president, he said, we have your copy of Liberace Cooks. Mrs. Johnson joins me in thanking you for your thoughtfulness. This home originally was a hotel, a small hotel. It had 32 guest rooms, and it was crying out to be saved. When I found it about 4 years ago, it had decayed quite noticeably and was going to be torn down. And I used to come over here in the evenings and look at the mountains and look at this beautiful structure. I felt that it was worth saving, so I bought it and I turned it into a private home. I find it very peaceful and serene, and I like to just come out here and sit during the lovely evenings, which are very balmy, incidentally. The climate here in Palm Springs is very mild, and at most times of the year we have temperatures in the high 70s, the low 80s, even in the wintertime. The Chamber of Commerce insists that the average temperature is 82 degrees. The cloisters is faced on one end by the master bedroom and on the other end by the shrine to St. Anthony. This is also a wonderful place to contemplate and find peacefulness. All the artifacts in this room come from churches that are now torn down. I found most of them at various auctions in Europe and around the country. The stained glass window, for example, is from Providence, Rhode Island. And since I live across the street from the Catholic Church, I am visited frequently by members of the church, and the entire house has been blessed by the local bishop. This is the bath, and the sound you hear in the background is the whirlpool tub. It's a marvelous, relaxing, sort of therapeutic kind of bath. You can either use it without the whirlpool or with the whirlpool, which I really enjoy. This champagne bubble bath, you want bubbles. Since the room is completely surrounded by mirrors, you can see reflections wherever you look. Reflections of the chandelier, the ferns. In fact, they go into infinity. The statue is from Rome, and it's made of white Carrara marble. This is the master bedroom at the cloisters. Most of the furnishings in this room are French Empire and Louis XV. It has a vaulted ceiling, and the most priceless possession in this room is the Louis XV desk, which was presented to Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, and on which the Franco-Russian alliance was signed. Most of the furnishings in this room were acquired through the purchase of a museum in Pensacola, Florida. And the desk is truly priceless, and it is insured for $275,000. As you can see, the dogs have the run of the house. Everybody says you have 2 beds in your bedroom. Well, one of them's for the dogs, and the other's for me. And this is the gazebo. It's at the far end of the property, and it's a lovely place to have lunch under the grape arbor. When the grapes are in season, all you have to do is reach up and pick a bunch, and they're very sweet, seedless grapes. These are the director's chairs that I had made up last Christmas. Instead of putting name cards on all the gifts, I had names put on the chairs in front of the gifts for all my guests and friends and family. And then when they took their gifts home, they took their chair with them. In the main dining room of the cloisters, I call this the William Randolph Hearst room because most of the furnishings in here very closely resemble those in San Simeon, which was the residence of William Randolph Hearst. One afternoon I was visited by William Randolph Hearst's son, and he brought over some photographs of furnishings that he thought I might be interested in that would suit the architecture of this home. And when he showed me the pictures, they were almost identical to the furnishings that you see in this room. So I thanked him and said I already had them. It's a marvelous cabinet. Everyone says, how do you open it? Because there are no handles, and you just push it in like that. The glassware is from Czechoslovakia, but actually I bought it at Disney World in Orlando, Florida.
He left behind much more than his music. Mr. Showmanship's true legacy is his trademark sparkle that predated glitter rock by more than a decade. On his last interview for Lifestyles, Liberace told us he wanted to create a souvenir video, one in which friends and fans could step into his world and enjoy his bedazzling possessions collected over a lifetime. This is it, for the first time on television. So, at Lee's request, we invite you to sit back, wear shades if you must, and enjoy what, next to his music, he truly loved. Just one snip of the scissors by good friend Debbie Reynolds marked the beginning of an auction and the end of an era. It launched his last hurrah. Much of the world's most famous collection of glitterama went under the hammer. It was a gone marathon Liberace would truly have appreciated. Who else but Lee could pull off one last super showy extravaganza after he'd gone?
When you look at the massive collection here, you can see he had wonderful taste in every style. He really just loved beautiful things, and certainly not predicting an early death for himself. He collected extensively, so this will be one of their largest auctions that they probably ever had, other than William Randolph Hearst.
He'd buy everything. He always did. His philosophy was, if it has a blank space on it, put something on it.
Liberace bought nothing but the best, yet he told us his buying binges weren't by any means random.
I'm a collector, that's true, but more than that, I'm a person that has to have a project. I'm always building something or restoring something, and I'm always involved in a project other than my entertainment work.
When Liberace first walked into this Los Angeles penthouse, it hadn't been lived in for over 17 years. It was, in his words, what you'd call a dump. But Lee was a master showman with unique talent and taste. And even to the amazement of his closest friends, he transformed this apartment into one of Hollywood's most fashionable addresses.
Inspired by the breathtaking penthouse view, it was easy for Liberace to outdazzle even Hollywood's glitz. Little touches like a black mink piano stool cover to match the king-size mink bedspread put him light years ahead. His one-of-a-kind Baccarat crystal table was once owned by an Indian Maharaja, but don't think Liberace was always this formal. A limo ride away, his beachfront condo was always kept ready. By Mr. Showmanship's terms, this was where he lived, simply. The celebrated Las Vegas villa, Liberace's favorite home of them all, plus a first-ever tour of his Spanish-style home, the one he called the Cloisters. But first, back to Robin at the All-Star Auction Block.
The auction is over and Liberace's celebrated possessions have been dispersed all over the world. But when we return, one final exclusive look at his treasured collection. A few days to disperse what took Liberace a lifetime to collect. His treasured possessions are now scattered throughout the world. But it takes only 2 accessories to recall his legendary talent. A concert grand piano is how he made the music, and a showy candelabra illuminated his one-of-a-kind razzle-dazzle. The magnificent obsession began after he saw a movie about the life of Chopin. If the Polish composer could have a pair of candelabras, then the maestro from Milwaukee could have dozens, hundreds even. Liberace's collection eventually became the most extensive in the world. When it came to pianos, he was an equally avid collector. With 10 strings to every note, his rare Bluthner is the only one of its kind left. In his last interview, he once told us,
"This is one of my prized possessions. It's a real museum piano. It's a Pleyel, and it was played on by Chopin and Franz Liszt during their lifetime. And it is quite a collector's item."
For the master pianist, size really didn't matter. In addition to his beloved collection of grands and baby grands, he also amassed thousands of miniature pianos from every corner of the world. Because his home turf was Las Vegas, his dazzling Nevada villa grew to become the most flamboyant of his 6 homes.
When I first moved here, it was just one little small sort of a townhouse. And I fell in love with the look of it, but then after I lived here a while, it was so small, I kept adding rooms onto it. And then it was still small, so I kept adding houses to it. I bought the next house and the next house, and then I made it all one complex.
The Vegas villa will best be remembered for one unique extravagance. Among his most treasured collections was an authentic Napoleon and Josephine dinnerware set for 12. He kept it at his nearby Tivoli Gardens restaurant.
I never really feel that I own these things. I feel they've been placed in my care to look after for future generations to enjoy. You don't really own them. You're a caretaker for these things. And when I think of all the people who had them before me, I feel privileged to be among such illustrious historical company.
Though he spent untold millions on his collections, Liberace wasn't just another wealthy pushover.
Fortunately, most of the things that I collected before they were so desirable. I used to go antiquing when you could really find bargains. I have never met a person of means who wasn't a bargain hunter, and that includes Jackie Onassis.
The piece de resistance of the Vegas villa is pure Liberace. Take a look at the ceiling in the master bedroom. It's Lee to a T.
I met this Italian painter who had done a restaurant, and he recreated some of the Michelangelo characters. So for 5.5 months, he was on a scaffold on his back, painting the ceiling in my bedroom. And he painted the Sistine Chapel, with apologies to Michelangelo.
For the first time on television, and the last time it will ever be seen intact, we exclusively present the home he called the Cloisters.
My home in Palm Springs is probably my most favorite home, because this is a home that was destined to be a parking lot for the Catholic Church and the Jewish synagogue, which borders it. It's filled with antiques and some very priceless things that I have acquired through the years. I have a desk, for instance, in Palm Springs that belonged to Tsar Nicholas II of Russia.
Beyond eclectic, His collection spans as many centuries as schools of art. One room is dedicated to a silent screen hero who had special meaning for him.
My mother was a Valentino fan. I mean, she named my kid brother after him, Rudolph. And my middle name was Valentino. In Palm Springs, I have a Rudolph Valentino room and so forth with all his memorabilia.
Though much of his memorabilia was auctioned off, fans shouldn't feel sad that much of his lifetime's collection is split up. Who else but Lee could afford the complete inventory? And, judging by a typical winning bid for each treasure, consider how many lucky fans now own a piece of the legend. His most treasured collectibles still remain at his museum. It generates millions for the Liberace Foundation for the Performing Arts. Young students who are now able to pursue their dreams can thank far-sighted generosity of the ultimate showman. For the rest of us, we need only be thankful for the man and his music. He brought joy to millions. It's easy to remember a star who's simply unforgettable.
I don't care if it's August, December, or June, for my heart sings a wonderful tune. As long as you care for me.
Liberace, a showman for eternity.
Sending us. I'm very happy to be with all of you nice people again. And today my program is inspired by the letters I received from some of you folks who say you like the classics best of all, and others who prefer the popular music on our program. And I hope that our program today will please all of you, because it's music both classic and popular. And to start with, here is Rimsky-Korsakov's Flight of the Bumblebee and its popular counterpart, the Bumble Boogie. you very, very much.
The Queen Mary is used to such minor personalities as kings and presidents, so she can almost take in her stride that fabulous figure, Liberace, the well-known American leader of fashion, arriving at Southampton from the United States with his mother and, of course, brother George. By the way, Liberace also plays the piano. On the Queen Mary's deck, we asked the maestro if he had brought his whole family along for this 3 weeks tour of Britain.
Almost. My mother, my brother George and his wife, and my arranger and his wife, our first violinist and his wife, my manager and his wife, and we have still another brother at home, a younger brother, and a sister who are sort of looking after the store while we're away.
I see, yes. Now, about your music, what would you say yourself the effect of the Liberace music is on America?
Well, I feel very grateful to have the opportunity through the medium of television and motion pictures to bring all kinds of music to the general public that otherwise would not be exposed to classical music, and therefore I try to acquaint them with it in small palatable doses until they acquire a taste for it, and then when they do, which they have proven to do during the past 5 years, I increase my dosage until they are ready to take the whole course of it.
On the platform at Southampton are one or two music lovers who just happened to be passing by on their way from London to London, and thought they might as well make sure he knew which train to catch. The train is labeled Liberace Special, so fortunately there's not much chance of a mistake. At Waterloo, Britain proves once again that she is a musical nation, deeply appreciative of culture in the widest sense. Not that Liberace likes undiluted admiration, he welcomes criticism. Though after one particularly harsh comment, he said, "I was so upset I cried, all the way to the bank." Liberace's motto is, "The public has a right to invade my privacy." So he learns his first lesson about Britain, that it's a country where the public loves to exercise its rights.
be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. They tried to change the name of my theme song in London last year to "I'll Be Suing You." In that small cafe, Hyde Park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut trees, the wishing well. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's warm and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll see you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you.
I'd like to change into something a little bit more spectacular. Is that okay with you? Sure.
Mr. Liberace, I've ordered the petit fours for the party on the yacht tonight.
Oh, no. Not good enough. Order petit fives. You want to see the rings, do you? This first one here is the candelabra ring, and this next one is a Russian sapphire. This is the piano ring. I used to have a swimming pool shaped like a piano once upon a time, but I got rid of it. Piano tuner damn near drowned.
Lee was a great entertainer, and the more flamboyant, the more he liked it, and the more, which was very important, his public liked it. In fact, that's what they expected.
When you think of Liberace, you think of glitz, you think of glamour, you think of showmanship.
Over a period of years, his personality changed as far as his appearance on stage was concerned, with costumes, cars, mirrored pianos, flying like Peter Pan.
Mary Poppins, eat your heart out.
Many times I'd see his fans wherever we might be, and before they even say hello, they'd say, "What is Lee wearing? What's he doing this year?" You know.
He brought classical music to the masses. For instance, people that came to his shows, they weren't people that go to your symphony concerts. They weren't people that were going to the opera. But when they came to his shows, he's playing Chopin, and people are loving it.
I think he'll always be remembered, at least by the generations that watched him, as what he was, Mr. Showmanship. He could make anything good just by his charm and his unaffected way of being just himself.
There is nobody in the world that was like Liberace. Nobody.
Hello, I'm Joanne Castle. Welcome to the extravagant world of the legendary Liberace. This is his museum in Las Vegas, created by the great entertainer himself. And every one of the fabulous objects in here was collected by or belonged to Liberace. There are 16 priceless pianos in here. One evening at a party at his home, I played for Liberace and his guests, and it was one of the most exciting moments of my life. I had been a fan since I was 12 years old, and I treasure his compliments. His talent, good looks, dramatic musical arrangements, and pure showmanship kept him in great demand everywhere. Like the music he presented to the public, Liberace was a unique blend of pop and classical. He was a trained musician, but he knew how to appeal to the general public, who had just been introduced to the brand new world of television entertainment. That small screen with a very big presence introduced Liberace to the 1950s audiences all over the United States. And it was the beginning of a phenomenon that would sweep the world. These early classic television shows tell the story of the legendary Liberace.
Liberace had television, and that made all the difference in the world. He was able to surpass everyone else because of the huge outreach of television. He was called television's first matinee idol in the true sense of the word. Everybody's mother and sister and aunt wouldn't do anything when Liberace's show was running. And he knew the power of television, to speak to the camera and actually be talking to the people in the audience across America and then actually the world.
And now, here's a number by one of my very favorite Latin contemporary composers. His name is Ernesto Lecuona, and I don't know whether he knows it or not, but he did me a wonderful favor when he wrote his exciting Malagueña, because I love playing it.
Liberace was known and loved all over the world as Mr. Showmanship, but his real name was a mouthful. Waju, Polish for Walter, Valentino Liberace, born in West Allis, Wisconsin. He was the second of 4 children, born to an Italian father, Salvatore, and a Polish mother, Frances. Divorce ended their unhappy marriage, and it was Liberace's mother who became his inspiration, comfort, and co-star for life.
When I was a boy, my mother often said to me, "Get married, boy, and see how happy you will be." Well, I have looked all over, but no girlie can I find who seems to be just like the little girl I have in mind. I want a girl just like the girl that married dear old Dad. She was a pearl and the only girl that Daddy ever had. A good old-fashioned girl with heart so true, one who loves nobody else but you. I want a girl just like the girl that married dear old Dad. I want a girl just like the girl that married dear old Dad.
Thank you very, very much. I'm glad you like that. Thank you.
Young Walter was a fragile but brilliant child who started playing the piano when he was 4 years old. Now, when he was just 7 years old, he received a scholarship to the Wisconsin College of Music. When he was just 14, he presented his first recital at the Wisconsin Conservatory. In the daytime, Walter was a popular high school student and, of course, played in the orchestra. At night, he was getting his education in show business, the hard way.
previous to television, Lee was a performer for 20 years. He was about 15 or 16 years old when he started. In fact, he looked so young, he used to paint on a false mustache so he wouldn't get arrested. During that period of growing up in his hometown, Milwaukee, and traveling around the country playing various saloons, he, developed as a performer.
In 1940, at the age of 20, he performed a Liszt piano concerto with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra and received his first important review. Quote, "Mr. Liberace did disclose a very considerable gift for brilliant pianism," unquote. Some nights he did small concerts for mostly appreciative audiences, and it was in La Crosse, Wisconsin that he made an important career discovery. He turned to the audience and said, "Instead of my usual encores, I'd like to play something you'd like to hear." After a long silence, a voice in the balcony said, "Three Little Fishies," Kay Kaiser's popular novelty song of the moment. Everybody laughed, except Walter. He started off with a Chopin introduction and then played the song as if it had been written by first Mozart, then Beethoven, and then John Philip Sousa. He got the biggest ovation of the evening and realized that a combination of the classics and popular music just might be his ticket for success. Here's how he did it years later.
Down in the meadow in a itty-bitty pool swam three little fishies and the mama fishy too. Swim, said the mama fishy, swim if we can. And they swam right over the dam. Boop, boop, did-em, dat-em, wat-em, chew. A boop, boop, did-em, dat-em, wat-em, chew. A boop, boop, did-em, dat-em, wat-em, chew. They swam right over the dam. Oh, they don't write lyrics like that anymore. Thank God. Now I'd like to play the same song for you the way I did many years ago at one of my first concerts in the styles of some of the classical composers of the past. Here's the beautiful blue Three Little Fishies Waltz by Johann Strauss.
An Associated Press reporter was in the audience that night in the 40s, and the story was carried by newspapers all over the country. Walter now knew the power of publicity, and it was a lesson he never forgot. In 1941, America was on its way to war, and a back injury kept Walter out of the service. He was tired of performing in Wisconsin and dreamed of New York City, with concerts at Carnegie Hall and engagements at fancy hotels and nightclubs. Now, he was starting to make a name for himself, but it was difficult trying to teach people to pronounce his last name Liberace and not Liberace. He even printed it phonetically in his ads, on his stationery, and on the cards he sent to club owners and fans. Then the manager of concert pianist Paderewski suggested he drop his first two names, so he became simply Liberace. Looking for new opportunities in audiences, Liberace headed west, first to California for a year, and then in 1945 to the Last Frontier Hotel, where he performed for the first time in Las Vegas. He saw the wagon wheel decor, the cowgirl waitresses, the casual crowd, and decided on the spot to change his act. He played his own unique versions of down-home music, boogie woogie, popular standards, and the beer barrel polka. The audience was enthusiastic, with loud applause, foot stomping, and cowboy yells. The next day, the manager called Liberace to her office and said, "We're going to tear up your contract. Instead of $750, we're going to pay you $1,500 a week. And you'll get more," she predicted. In 1956, he opened at the Riviera Hotel in Las Vegas as the highest paid entertainer in the city's history.
I can recall being at Liberace shows where you see the people coming in, and this is usually in Las Vegas, you know, there's a lot of people, and you could see the wives dragging their husbands, and their husbands is thinking, oh my gosh, do I have to go see Liberace? And I'll tell you, after 10 minutes, the husbands are cheering, they're clapping, they are so excited because this man, he just wins you over.
Amazing things were happening to Liberace. In 1950, he was invited to the White House to play for President Harry Truman, and his performance was another triumph. At the president's request, he played for 25 minutes, much longer than any of the other performers that evening. He began with Franz Liszt's 14th Hungarian Rhapsody. Over, President Truman invited Liberace to come back and said, "I want Bess and Margaret to hear you. They'll be so sorry they weren't here tonight." In 1949, on his 30th birthday, Liberace was earning $3,000 a week, but he was still dissatisfied with the way his career was going. He wanted to reach a mass audience and just didn't know how. He hired new managers, the same team that represented my soon-to-be boss, Lawrence Welk, and they introduced him to Don Feddersen, the new manager of KLAC TV in Los Angeles. He was a man with foresight, imagination, intuition, the perfect combination for success in the explosive new medium of television.
And Don drove Liberace over to the San Fernando Valley and drove him around, and then he drove him over to Beverly Hills and drove him around. And he said, "Now, Lee, did you notice anything different?" He said, "Well, not really. What do you mean?" He said, "Well, did you notice that there are no TV antennas in Beverly Hills. He said, yeah, you're right. He said, but what about the San Fernando Valley? A TV antenna on every house. And Don told him, that's your audience.
The Liberace television show made its debut on KLAC-TV in January of 1952. He received just $1,000 for each program, and out of it, he had to pay his brother George and the 5-piece orchestra. The reviewers ignored the show, but the public loved it.
I don't care if it's August, December, or June, for my heart sings a wonderful tune. As long as you care for me.
Viewers called with positive comments, and within a month, a local bank agreed to sponsor the show. On the morning after the bank's first commercial broadcast, the manager was horrified to see 100 people lined up at the door. A run on the bank, he thought. He soon learned, with relief, that Liberace had announced that anyone opening a new account with $10 would receive one of his records. In 3 months, new customers had deposited over $600,000 in order to get a free record from the handsome young man on television.
I'm going to open my program tonight, ladies and gentlemen, with a very exciting little composition by Cacciaturian. It's called The Saber Dance.
the first season, Liberace did each television show twice. The first time live for the California audience, and then they would spend long hours the next day filming it at the Music Hall Theater on Wilshire Boulevard. The show then could be sold and shipped to TV stations around the country. They tried to shoot without interruptions, just to keep that live feeling on the show. Lawrence Welk did that too, through all the years I worked on the show. The pristine, high-quality black and white segments you're enjoying on this program are from the 117 shows that Liberace recorded in those few years. The shows made him famous, and within a few years would make him wealthy. He won 2 Emmys in 1953 for Best Entertainment Program and Most Outstanding Personality.
The black and white television shows of that period, was something new for the public. Television made him a national figure, which he did for, I think, 5 or 6 years his show ran. Everyone knew Liberace, because we all sat in the dark looking at 2 channels, and he happened to be on one of them.
Sitting in the Brown Derby and having lunch. That's the place where they have all those wonderful caricatures of famous people on the wall. And I caught the eyes of Eddie Cantor and Bob Hope and Jack Benny, and I decided that I'd like to dedicate a little number to these famous caricatures, these wonderful comedians.
In April of 1953, only 35 stations carried the Liberace show, but by September, the number was 100. A few months later, the number soared to 180. More stations were carrying Liberace than I Love Lucy. By 1954, it was carried by 217 American stations and 20 foreign countries. One New York station played his show 10 times a week. 5,000 fan letters arrived at Liberace's office every week, mostly from middle-aged ladies. Liberace had become television's first matinee idol.
Of course, in our home, we always had music. I can remember even as a child, I used to listen to my mother and father play little folk songs, such as this little Italian folk song called Santa Lucia.
But the TV shows were very different from the color versions of the specials that would later replace them. They had a magic that, because of the honesty, the one-on-one honesty that Liberace was able to capture through the camera, and all the little gimmicks, you know, the wink, the famous wink that he'd always do a couple of times during the show, and he had everybody in America and later the world winking.
I start to shake, I start to shiver, and every fiber in my being seems to quiver. It's a feeling very close to ecstasy. That's what happens when Liberace winks at me. I start to blush, I start to stammer, and my pulse starts a-pounding like a hammer. I'm bewitched as any fool can plainly see. That's what happens when Liberace winks at me. I go berserk, I start to tingle. I'm so gosh darn glad that I'm still single. When he drops that eyelid, I just shout, wow-wee! That's what happens when Liberace smiles and winks at me.
He knew all the gimmicks of how to entertain the public. He was the first one on television to look straight into the camera. They were very much, they said, people don't do that. He says, well, I do it. And that was his success.
And also created a lot of the moves in television camera work today. There was shooting down through the lid of a piano, what's called a Liberace at the time. Because they were actually inventing television, I guess you'd say.
One time, he was playing the Plaza Hotel in New York. One afternoon, he went to a movie and he saw a film on the life of Chopin with Merle Oberon. And on the piano in the movie was a candelabra. Leaving the theater, he passed an antique shop and he saw this candelabra in the window. It must have been like a vision. And he bought the candelabra and put it on the piano that night at the Persian Room at the Plaza Hotel. And that's how that started. And that caused a sensation, you know, a candelabra on the piano with candles. You know, no one had ever done that before. So that was, that's how all that kind of started.
The format of the show was always the same. An intimate set, simple lighting effects, and you only heard the audience. George never talked and was always Liberace's straight man.
George, don't you think you ought to thank the audience in your own way for all that wonderful applause?
Mom was introduced from time to time.
Say hello to the folks, Mom.
But during most of the program, the camera just stayed on that smiling Liberace and his shiny piano.
I wanna hear it again, I wanna hear it again, the old piano roll blues. Sitting at it upright, my sweetie and me, we're pushing on the pedal, singing sweet harmony. I wanna hear it again, the rinky-dee-ting, we cuddle closer at sea. We kiss, a kiss, a kiss, a kiss, away all night here. Piano plays a glorious of a taz. I wanna hear it again, I gotta hear it again, the old piano roll blues. Skitty boo and razzmatazz. Instead of a love and roll, piano roll, I get a funny feeling down in my soul. So keep on singing, baby, while I keep palpitating. The old piano roll, good old piano roll, that old piano roll blue.
To add a little variety to the show, sometimes Liberace would sing and even dance.
your coat and get your hat. Leave your worries on the doorstep. Just direct your feet on the sunny side of the street. Oh, how much is that doggy in the window? The one with the waggly tail. Oh, how much is that doggy in the window? I do hope that doggy's for sale.
The directors of both the live show and the film show, Jim Hobson and Duke Goldstone, stretched their imagination to the limit to create interesting scenes on a very tight budget, using special film effects whenever possible. On a few rare occasions, the Liberace show would go all out and arrange for a set and costumes.
Someone's in the kitchen with Dinah. Someone's in the kitchen, I know. Someone's in the kitchen with Dinah, strumming on the old banjo. Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow your horn? Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow? Dinah, won't you blow your horn?
Liberace, I'd like to know where you got that smile. Hey, Liberace, you must have a winning style. Since you have been on TV, my wife won't speak to me. In her dreams of Liberace, oh, what you've done to me.
This is one of Liberace's favorite pianos, the famous Rhinestone Baldwin grand piano, made to match his rhinestone costume and car. And who wouldn't want an ensemble like that? It was used in the finale of Liberace's last performance at Radio City Music Hall in New York City in 1986. When I was growing up, I dreamed of playing a duet with Liberace, and now, through the magic of editing and our own special effects, it is my pleasure to play a duet with the great Liberace.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.
And thank you, Lee. In 1956, the Liberace show had negotiation problems with the producing company, and the series ended. Liberace had earned a fortune from it and had really learned how to spend it. Everywhere he performed, he scoured the antique shops for treasures to fill his steadily growing number of homes. At one time, he had 10 of them. His income on the television series amounted to $7 million from just the first 2 years, and that was in 1954. When reviewers criticized him for condensing classical pieces and for adding runs and flourishes, Liberace would always smile and say, "I don't mind the bad reviews." But George cries all the way to the bank.
Thank you very, very much.
Believe it or not, I get a lot of requests for that chopsticks. And I was still thinking about Chopin, how Chopin might have played that number. My goodness, it's a good idea. Let me try it once. Chopin playing chopsticks.
first appearance at the Hollywood Bowl in 1952 was an important occasion for more than one reason. It marked the beginning of his amazing journey to the peak of costuming history. Obviously, he is my personal hero.
He was doing a concert at the Hollywood Bowl, and he said to his manager, I'm going to be so far away from the audience that they're not going to be able to see me. And so I want to wear white. Well, it was unheard of. Nobody had ever worn white at the Hollywood Bowl. Well, he said, that's what I'm going to wear.
There'll be a change in the weather and a change in the sea. From now on there'll be a change in me. My walk will be different, my talk is my name. Nothing about me's gonna be the same. I'll even change my way of living, if that ain't enough. I'll even change the way I strut my stuff. Nobody loves you when you're old and gray. There'll be some changes made today. There'll be some changes made.
In 1954, he played to 15,000 fans, mostly ladies, at Madison Square Garden, and wore the famous gold lame jacket. He earned $138,000 that night, a fact that was entered in the Guinness Book of Records as the highest single salary ever paid to a pianist. The very next year, Liberace was asked to open the new Riviera Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas at the unheard-of salary of $50,000 a week. In 1965, when Liberace was 46 years old, he celebrated his 25th anniversary in show business.
The story goes that Elvis Presley was guesting on his show, and Liberace told him that he shouldn't wear anything as simple or mundane as he was going to wear. And why didn't he just put on one of Lee's jackets, which by this time were made of sequins and glittered.
Nobody loves you when you're old and gray. There'll be some changes made today. There'll be some changes made.
The costumes really came to a peak in the 60s and 70s, and of course the bulk of his wardrobe money would go to creating greater and wilder and more flamboyant costumes, and it was really incredible.
We started spending more and more on his costumes. We did one, he called it his Neptune costume, which was pink with pearls and big seashell designs all over the place. We had another one, a Regency costume, which looked like something out of a royal family. There were double surprises when he came out, because they'd see the outside, then he'd wave the cape around, you'd see the inside. The whole inside was done with gold feathers. It looked like something out of an Egyptian museum. And then he would lose the cape and you'd really see what the costume was itself before he would sit down at the piano.
Lee proposed me by saying to me, I want Anna something very spectacular for the stage. Can you create a cape for me? Something that nobody else has ever worn on stage. I said, let me think. What about a beautiful milk cape, because it wears better, for something for you to enjoy for the very many years to come.
What do you think? Too much? Why don't I slip out and get into something more spectacular? What do you think? All right? You like this one? Yeah, it's one of my favorites. It's not the loudest outfit in my wardrobe, but it's the most expensive. Yeah. You know why? Because of the buttons. They're real diamond buttons. Yeah. In fact, the buttons cost more than the suit. I have here in this home about 200 suits, 400 sports shirts and slacks, and about 100 pairs of shoes. And believe it or not, I wear them all. I don't blame you for laughing. You know, sometimes I look at all this stuff and I can hardly believe it myself. Oh, well. My clothes may look funny, but they're making me the money. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, wait, I gotta tell you. Remember that bank I used to cry all the way to? I bought it.
In the 60s and the 70s, Liberace did personal appearances and concerts all over the world, working at least 32 weeks a year. He performed for Queen Elizabeth and the Queen Mother. He met the Pope and presidents and was friendly with Hollywood's biggest stars, particularly the ones who played Las Vegas and Lake Tahoe, like Tom Jones and Debbie Reynolds. In 1978, 10 years after his summer TV series from London, he returned to television with a spectacular show they called Leapin' Lizards. It's Liberace. A not-so-candid comment on his similarity to Little Orphan Annie's Daddy Warbucks.
I used to need work to fill every hour. I needed that feeling of power. Now every other need has disappeared from view. I don't need anything but you. I don't need anything, I don't need anything
Tonight we have a couple with us who were just married today, and it's so seldom I get a chance to dedicate a number to newlyweds this late in the evening. So if you don't mind, I'm going to do a special number just for them because they're a very special couple. It so happens it's the second time around for both of them. She's 65 and he's 71. Isn't that something? And they requested a very beautiful song. It's Impossible. That's the name of the song.
Liberace founded the Liberace Foundation for the Performing and Creative Arts in 1976, and it started really as his idea of a way to give back. He received scholarship assistance for his classical studying from a very young age.
It was formed at a meeting in a little hotel restaurant in Los Angeles, and Liberace was there, and all of a sudden he said, I want to have a foundation. I want to give scholarships to needy students that want to have careers in the creative and performing arts.
One of our scholars was a Naumburg winner of the piano competition, and he is very generous in coming back and supporting us and doing performances for us.
This is such a tough career that if you have to worry about finances or working another part-time job or something in addition to practicing the piano, it's virtually impossible to succeed. So getting the support and the financial assistance of the Liberace Scholarship just allowed me to concentrate on my music, and that was the most important thing.
It was no surprise to his fans and friends that Liberace would want to share his treasures with the world. On Easter Sunday, 1979, he welcomed the first guest into his museum and led the initial tour himself. Liberace, at age 65, was still up to the challenge of new ideas and new audiences. Radio City Music Hall in New York City had been after him to perform there for years. Liberace finally agreed and did an advanced publicity tour, getting rave reviews for his appearance on The David Letterman Show. In 1984, the Liberace Show replaced the traditional Easter pageant and was a smashing success. The audience knew they were in for something special. From the moment he was driven on stage in his white Rolls Royce, in his white mink coat, with the 12-foot train. Liberace returned to Radio City the next year for 21 sold-out performances.
I heard that the music hall was going to have him coming down a staircase, and we needed something for him to make an entrance. So I came up with the idea of a giant Fabergé egg that would open up, and he would come out of it all done up in pink turkey feathers with a huge collar. We even did the music hall girls in costumes to match his costume, and they all held candelabras, which made a very, very effective entrance.
We were looking for a new finale for the show, and that's always very difficult to get a good payoff. And I came up with the idea. I think I had seen an old movie on television somewhere, Peter Pan, and I thought, God, that would be heaven if we could do that for Lee. And I spoke to Lee about it, possibly doing flying. He said, oh no, it can't be, I can't do that. I said, yes, you can. I said, let me think about it. And fortunately, we were in Vegas at the time, and a very good friend of mine, Peter Foy, who owns the flying equipment, lived in Vegas. So I contacted Peter, and I spoke to him about possibly setting up the equipment one afternoon at the Hilton Hotel where Lee was appearing, and let him try this.
And Debbie Reynolds was in town, and Lee and Debbie shared the same manager, Seymour Heller. So Seymour called Debbie and said, can you come help teach Lee to fly? So she comes over, and she watches him, and she says, you've got to arch your back, arch your back.
And that was the beginning of the flying, and he just loved it.
You've got a beautiful audience. Bless you. but now I must fly.
In fact, after a while, he thought he was a great bird, flying away.
Even lizards, you see, I'm doing my part to conserve gas. Mary Poppins, eat your heart out.
At his last Radio City engagement in 1986, to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Statue of Liberty, he dressed as a drum major as he had 10 years before in a red, white, and blue sequin costume with hot pants. At his last performance, Liberace entertained nearly 6,000 of his fans with as much enthusiasm for show business as he had as a young man. After the show, the crew, his staff, and even the Rockettes gathered on stage to celebrate his accomplishment. A total of 56 performances at Radio City Music Hall. No other entertainer in history even came close to that number. Obviously tired and not looking well, Liberace appeared on Oprah's show in December 1986, did a publicity tour for his new book, and went home to Palm Springs to spend Christmas with his family. He died just 6 weeks later, on February 4th, 1987, of complications from the AIDS virus.
So I jumped in my car and I drove to Palm Springs, and they prepared me. I went into his bedroom, which was converted into a hospital room for the nurses and everything else. And the nurse said, talk to him. He can hear you, but he won't be able to answer you. He's in a coma and he was breathing heavy. So I took his hand and said a little prayer and said goodbye. And he died that night.
Never say goodbye, say ciao, till we meet again, say ciao. Though the time has come for us to part, you always will remain within my heart.
If Liberace was still performing today, I think he would be bigger than ever, because things like charisma, showmanship, magnetism transcend the ages.
Time will disappear, so hold me dear, and never say goodbye, say ciao. You know, ladies and gentlemen, when words are hard to find to say what's on my mind, I just speak one little word in Italian. To those I must leave behind, please don't shed a tear, say ciao, you'll be always near, somehow. I have no message for the world except that I think sometimes people do not realize how truly fortunate they are just to have their health and to have the pleasure of their family and be blessed with good and loyal friends. Thank you very much. And for you, for me, thank you very much. Bless you. Thank you very much. Ciao! I am not the greatest pianist in the world. There certainly are greater virtuosos than I am. But I have been able to do with the piano something that maybe even the virtuosos haven't been able to do. I've been able to reach the people.
You can be sure there will never be another entertainer like the legendary Liberace. And I can tell you, we all really miss his sense of fun and fantasy. Lee, in our hearts, we'll be seeing you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a wonderful evening being with all of you, and before I say goodnight, I'd like to sing one little song that I used to sing at the close of all my television shows back in the 1950s. It's one of my favorites, so for old time's sake, here it is again. I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way, the children's carousel, the chestnut trees, the wishing well. I'd like to thank my guests, the Chinese acrobats of Taiwan, Barclay Shaw, Vince Cardell, and my special guest, Debbie Reynolds, for being with us tonight. And of course, all of you. So until we meet again, ladies and gentlemen, I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. must fly. Even lizards, you see, I'm doing my part to conserve gas. Mary Poppins, eat your heart out. playing for you now Beethoven's first movement of the D minor sonata.